podcast from CBS Sports.
High drive, center field, hit the wall, grand slam. This is magnificent.
Got a fantasy question? Email fantasybaseball@cbsi.com. Get ready to win your league.
Where fantasy becomes reality.
Now here's Frank, Scott, Chris, and Adam.
You are never going to believe this, but we're actually doing part 4 of our starting pitcher preview today.
Please.
Just kidding. Well, these guys want to do it. They just spent the last 15 minutes talking about starting pitchers before we got started here. But welcome to Fantasy Baseball today, and welcome to our 2021 relief pitcher preview. Frank Stanfield, joined as always by Scotty Dubs, Scott White, and CPT, Chris Towers. Shout out to Chris, by the way, the newest entrant into the Tout Wars fraternity. Congratulations, Chris.
Thanks. I've got my draft tomorrow, 12:15. We're doing a 12-team mixed league with innings pitched as one of the categories and saves plus holds, and I believe OPS. I think that's the
wow. What do they call? What does Tout Wars call this league?
I think it's like just being called 12-team mixed league.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
it doesn't really have a fancy name.
Yeah.
It should have been the Bizarro League or something like that.
I'm looking forward to it. I've got to, do some research to see how I need to adjust my process based on that. But looking forward to it. It's a good group. I'm, going up against some big names. They're going to make me look bad. So looking forward to it.
For those who have no idea what we're talking about, Tout Wars is a collection of expert analysts in the fantasy baseball industry in a bunch of different leagues. Scott is in the 15-team 5x5 Roto League, which he won last year, by the way. I am in the 12-team salary cap head-to-head points league, which I did not win last year. So hopefully I will have better fortunes this year. Let's start with a little relief pitcher trivia here on the podcast. Kirby Yates was the saves leader with 41 saves back in 2019. He was the only reliever that season with 40-plus saves. Can you guess how many relievers were on pace for 40-plus saves last season?
Okay, so 40-plus saves would be...
Don't do the math, Chris. Come on.
Well, no. I'm just like, it would be like 18?
Zero.
It would be 18 saves?
No, wait a second. Brad Hand had 16 saves,
17.
right?
He had 16 saves. I am not telling you the answer to any of these questions.
All right, 3.
Scott says 3. He went from 0 to 3 real quick.
17 saves would have been...
Don't do the math.
On pace for 40. Well, I mean, it's like in another year, I can just say, oh, this guy had 40. And also, I promise you, I don't know how many saves people had last season. It is not part of my analysis when I'm ranking relief pitchers. None.
Okay, so Chris says 0 and Scott says 3. You are both wrong. There was only one, and it was Brad Hand. He had 16 saves last season, which put him on pace for 43.
You're rounding up.
The second closest saves leader was had 14, and that's something like 37 or 38. So we're basically exactly where we were back in 2019. Not a lot of saves to go around, which makes the position very frustrating, specifically in Roto leagues, because saves are one of the categories, and that's why we are constantly chasing them throughout the course of the season. So this is our relief pitcher preview. We're going to try and figure out who all of these closers are. We're going to hit some ADP, sleepers, breakouts, bust, SPARPs, which you need to know in points leagues. Those are starting pitchers that you can use as relief pitchers. And today I'm going to bring up RPASPs, which are the opposite. They're relief pitchers that you can use as starting pitchers, which are actually very valuable in head-to-head categories leagues if you want to use a Marmol strategy. More on the Marmol strategy a little bit later on as well. So let's start off with just some relief pitcher strategy in general. Scott, I'll start with you. In a standard 5x5 Roto, where you have to start 9 pitchers typically, usually a 900 to 1,000 inning minimum for the entire season, what is your normal breakdown? Is it 6 starting pitchers and 3 hopeful closers? Is it 7 and 2? What do you usually wind up with in a Roto league?
I mean, the ideal for me is still 6 and 3 3 being guys I expect to get saves at the start of the season, but I'm not nearly as rigid about it as I used to be. And, if you're talking a salary cap league, I don't really want to invest any money in closers, really, like $2 max. If I happen to get somebody in line for saves for $2, great. If not, I'm content to just play the waiver wire because, I think saves is such a fluid category, so much turnover happening throughout the course of the season that you could literally invest nothing in it and win it without needing a miracle or anything. You're just aggressive on the waiver wire anytime a new safe source turns up. And I think that's actually how it played out for me in Tout Wars last year. I drafted really low end closers. Like I think maybe Melanson I ended up getting, and he turned out okay. But otherwise it was like Wade Davis and
I remember that. It was
Hunter Harvey.
Bad. It was bad.
Yeah. And I'm pretty, if I didn't win the saves category in that 15 league, I finished second. And that was in a short season too, where I didn't even have as much time to make up ground. I just picked up every Daniel Bard and Stefan Crichton that emerged, and it, the saves added up. So there's so much turnover happening all season long. It's going to be guys contributing to the category that we don't see coming at the start of the year. So it's not like I even feel like I need to invest in a prospective save source. I don't think that's a bad idea, but that's not necessarily the path either. So I don't like investing a lot in saves. I don't like drafting the high end closers. I like drafting those back end guys. If I can get a big strikeout source, a big ratios guy for a discount, okay. But probably just one, and I'm happy if it's none. And I just stock up on every Joaquin Soria and Amir Garrett type at the end of drafts.
Chris, I know that you hate closers and relief pitchers in general, but they are a category in the standard 5x5. I will say, you can punt a category in a 5x5 roto league, and you can win your league, but it's very difficult because you need to finish top 3, at least top 3 in every other category, all 9 other categories. Yeah. So it just makes your margin for error that much more slim. It's possible, but it's tough. Chris, when it comes to relief pitcher strategy, do you have an idea of, okay, I want to get one of my top 12 guys throughout the draft. I want to get, someone else in like my top 20 range. So like 2 in my top 20. Do you have any type of strategy like that going into a draft?
No, my strategy for relief pitcher is don't make a pick that costs anything. And that means I'll miss out on Josh Hader and Aroldis Chapman and Liam Hendricks and all those guys. But when you're just thinking about the optimal usage of your available resources in a fantasy league, you have to think of, you've got 2 main pools of resources when it comes to acquiring players. You've got your draft picks, which are static, and you've got your free agent / waiver / fab pickups for the course of the full season. Your draft picks are, in decreasing order, the most valuable assets you have. I don't know when a waiver wire pickup becomes more valuable than a draft pick, but I think it's probably not before the first 20 rounds. And I think punting saves in your draft is a perfectly viable strategy, given how few guys I feel confident are very good, plus guys I feel confident are going to get most of their team saves. I don't know if that group, if that Venn diagram includes more than 10, maybe 11 guys. And so I just, and closers are getting pushed back up boards this year. Last year, closers were cheaper because it was a bad year for closers. Last year wasn't really that much better of a year for closers, but the guys we did draft had pretty good years. And I think that's, elevating some guys. I think they're just, all in all, as a population, just about the worst picks you can make. I guess the counter argument to that would be if everybody's going to if all the starters are going to throw 150 innings and the relievers throw 70, that makes the relievers relatively more valuable. But again, we don't really know who's good. And all the questions about who's good based on last season are way more amplified for relievers who made, like, Josh Hader threw what, 22 innings or something? Like he
Right.
probably there was a stretch of last season, I'm pretty confident, where Corbin Burns had more innings for sure in a 4-start stretch than Josh Hader had all season.
Hader had 19 innings.
Right, like that's
Crazy.
I would bet Corbin Burns had a 3-start stretch where he had more innings than Josh Hader had all season. And I mean, I like Corbin Burns despite the small sample size, but I would not like him all that much if it was a 3-start sample size. Now, obviously, Josh Hader is very good. But I think of all the years, this is the year to just not invest much in reliever.
I will just say, I think that there is, at least in Roto, a clear top 12 relievers, and then I think it kind of just falls off the face of the earth. So that 10 through 12 range for me, Kirby Yates, Ryan Presley, Craig Kimbrell, those are probably the last-ish closers that I feel pretty confident about. And that's the last of a group that I want one of my top 12, typically in a Roto league. I'll try to grab another one in that 13 to 20 range, a low-end closer too, and then maybe I'll pick up 2 guys towards the end of my draft just to speculate on. But
repeat those names for a second, Frank.
yeah, so 10 through 12 for me in my Roto ranks: Kirby Yates, Ryan Presley, Craig Kimbrell, and then just after Kimbrell is Colomé, Rafael Montero, Nick Anderson, and I think it gets a little bit dicey with those guys.
It's dicey with those guys.
Kirby Yates, who suffered a season-ending injury like 2 weeks into last season, didn't factor really. Ryan Presley, who was so bad at the start of last season, he nearly lost his job and may have never gotten a chance to close again. And Craig Kimbrell, who 2 years in a row, he hasn't been somebody the Cubs could rely on, and was quickly removed from the closer role. And you're saying that's the last group you're confident in. I'm not saying that to pick on you.
It's a relative term to the position.
I'm just saying, actually, from my perspective, I think there are guys going after that I'm about as confident in. I do think that group probably has more upside and more history, by and large. Certainly Yates and Kimbrell do. But I don't think they're particularly safe, and I don't think what comes after them is really that much less safe. At least a handful of pitchers.
It tells you what you need to know about the position. I mean, it is truly a mess. It is gross. And, using the term, comfortable, closers that I like, it's a relative term to the position. Scott, speaking of just relief pitcher strategy, I asked you this a couple of weeks ago, head-to-head points leagues, what you do there. And you said, don't invest anything. But I feel like it's a little bit tougher this year more than ever before, because those sparps that we talk about year in and year out that you typically use in a head-to-head points league, those are starting pitchers that have relief pitcher eligibility. They are terrible this year. Yep. They are worse this year than ever before, than I can ever imagine. I don't think that's hyperbolic. They're very bad. Well, you might have to pay attention a little bit more in a points league this season.
It was such a short season that not that many pitchers had a chance to change roles between the bullpen and the rotation. The best is probably AJ Puck, who didn't pitch at all last year and may not have a starting job going in. And then you're looking at Michael Lorenzen, Jose Quintana, Nick Pivetta. If you want to go there again. Oh, yeah, Alex Wood, I think. Yeah, he's got a rotation spot for the Giants.
I mean, honestly, I think there are 6 closers I feel good about. I'm looking at my list, because I'm not 100% sure James Karinchak is a closer. I think he is. I assume he is. But I'm not 100% sure. There are 6 guys, I think. Josh Hader, Aroldis Chapman, Liam Hendricks, Edwin Diaz, Raisel Iglesias, and Brad Hand. I think those are the only guys I can say they're good, and they are their team's closer. James Karinchak, we might find out in 4 days he is the team's closer.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, managers especially, they don't want to commit to that any sooner than they have to. And even while they're in the process of using a guy as a closer, they won't necessarily call him a closer. So that's just, I don't think you can ever have that standard anymore. This guy is for sure I'm 100% sure this guy is the closer, just because nobody's going to let you have 100% assurance that anybody's the closer. To answer your question though, Frank, about the head-to-head leagues, I'm assuming 12 teams or fewer, 2 relief pitcher spots to fill, only 24 that need to go around. I can come up with 24 pitchers that I feel confident are going to be the main guy for saves, at least at the start of the year. Obviously half of them are going to lose their job at some point in the year, but it's not predictable who that's going to be with great certainty. So I just want, as long as I'm getting somebody who I can count on for saves in the moment, I don't care how quote unquote good they are in a points league, especially because most of their points are coming from the saves themselves, not anything else they contribute.
Scott, do you actually want any of those Sparps in your starting lineup? The names that stood out to me that I noticed: Jose Quintana, AJ Puck, Joe Ross, Cal Quantrill, Nick Pivetta, Michael Lorenzen, Adrian Cajon.
Puck certainly has the upside.
Mm-hmm.
Probably won't have the role at the start of the year, but somebody who's going to factor at some point as a Sparp this year, I would imagine.
Have they walked back? I know in February, I think, general manager, whose name I can't remember, said that they view him as in the rotation.
Yeah, they've changed that after signing Mike Fiers. It sounds like Puck's probably going to begin in the bullpen to preserve his innings as much as anything else. I do think Michael Lorenzen is a legit sleeper. I like what the Reds are doing with pitchers, and he became more of a swing and miss guy late last year, which we're talking about a matter of 3 starts or so, obviously. But I think I think I could spend a last round pick on him in a points league just to see where it goes. But Quintana, as a streamer type at some point, I'm sure he'll matter because he'll be getting innings for the Angels, but he's not exciting at this stage of his career. And Pivetta, I mean, I'm not counting on much there. I don't think it's a total lost cause, but I really need to see it to believe it from him. So no, I wouldn't say there's any Sparp that I'm really putting an asterisk next to heading into a head-to-head points draft.
How the mighty have fallen. Not that Nick Pivetta was ever the mighty, but when people propped him up to be. I believe it was entering the 2018 season where Pivetta and Shane Bieber were being drafted around the same range.
They had like identical stats the year before.
Yeah,
it's the kind of thing where it's like they were both like mid to high 4s ERA guys, and you see how chasing the peripherals can work out when you're talking about a guy who gets hit as hard as those two guys do.
We're going to do an exercise where we try to guess each team's closer and who's definitively in that role and who's not. But before we get there, just wanted to remind everybody about Paramount Plus. You've probably seen the Journey to Mount Paramount spots featuring Bill Cower, James Corden, Patrick Stewart, and Beavis and Butthead. Yeah, it's quite the squad. But Paramount Plus is live sports, breaking news, and a mountain of entertainment. You can go straight from game day to movie night with Paramount Plus. Stream iconic movies like The Godfather, Indiana Jones, and Mission Impossible, and new episodes of critically acclaimed original series like Star Trek Picard, The Good Fight, and The Stand. And get this, it's where you can dive into live sports from us, CBS Sports, including the NFL, March Madness coming up, March Madness coming soon, the Masters, and Champions League Soccer. Plus stream hit shows from CBS, Nickelodeon, MTV, BET, the Smithsonian Channel, and Comedy Central. Live sports, breaking news, and a mountain of entertainment. Paramount Plus streaming March 4th. Also, we've hinted at it a little bit here, but Chris, I know that the draft prep guide that you have been working tirelessly on is just about ready to release. So
I think it'll be available tomorrow on cbssports.com. There will be a URL that you can go to. I think it's going to be cbssports.com/FBT draft guide, but I don't want to, don't go there yet because it probably won't be live until sometime tomorrow.
We'll tweet it out. Don't worry.
There will be, we'll tweet it out. There will be sign-up boxes in most of our stories. So basically all you'll need to do is put your email address in it. You'll get sent an email with 37 pages of draft prep. So it's got, cheat sheets with consensus rankings for head-to-head and roto, ADP, consensus auction values, position by position breakdowns with Scott's tiers, consensus rankings for each position with a little breakdown from myself, Scott's strategies for each position. It's got a little cheat sheet from all three of us with our kind of overarching strategy for the year, 5 sleepers, breakouts, and busts, 5 draft day rules, which I think is a kind of cool little thing. And you'll want to check it out. I think it's and the results of a couple of mock drafts that we did. So I think it's a pretty cool product that'll be useful to have with you while you're doing your prep.
Yep. And Chris put a lot of work into it, and I've seen it. It's awesome. And normally I don't do this. I don't like prop up our stuff. And
no, he usually says all my stuff is bad.
I would never say that, Chris. But a lot of other places are, selling a draft prep guide or whatever they might do. And it's free. It's 100% free. So why wouldn't you take advantage? And you can use it throughout your draft. You can write down all your draft picks throughout your salary cap draft as well. You can keep track of how much money you have left and stuff. So it really is an awesome product. And I would recommend everyone go and check it out. All right. So let's start in the National League, and we'll start in the NL East. The Mets, Edwin Diaz, definitely the closer.
Yes.
Yes. All right.
They're not saying definitely. They brought in Tyler Duffy, but yeah, I mean, they never said definitely last year either. And Edwin Diaz ultimately wound up in the role, pitched well. I'm counting on him as a top 5 reliever.
That's Trevor May, by the way, right, Scott? Not Tyler Duffy.
Right.
I mean, all these
two dominant arms at the back end of the Twins bullpen last year. I picked the wrong one. Yes, Trevor May. Thank you.
Trevor May.
Tyler Duffy. Tyler Duffy is still in Minnesota, Twins fans. Don't worry.
And he's very good. So for those who need holds or just a high-end reliever, he's pretty good. That's Tyler Duffy. The Nationals, Brad Hand. Is this a definite? Because I saw a quote the other day from Davey Martinez. He said, quote, "In a perfect world, Brad Hand is a closer."
See, that's what they like to do. They all like to hedge. Brad Hand is, of course, the closer, unless he's bad. I mean, he lost some velocity last year, but he was dominant. Obviously, led the league in saves, and though the velocity went down, the numbers were still amazing. So I'm confident drafting him. I think he's like 6th for me among relievers. But they do have a really good closer in waiting, in Tanner Rainey, who looked like, before they went out and signed. Was it a sign or a trade of Hand? I think it was a signing. Right?
It was a sign. Yep.
Yeah. It looked like Tanner Rainey was ready to step into that role. So if you're drafting prospective closers late, Rainey's pretty high on that list for me, just in case something goes wrong for Hand.
I should have mentioned that we don't have to go too deep on the analysis here, Scott. We could just, we're going to get to ADP a little bit later on. So let's just, I guess, say if the guy's definitely the closer. So we'll put Brad Hand in that category. Definitely. The Phillies.
Neris. I think it's Neris.
You think so? I mean, they brought in Archie Bradley and Brandon Kinsler and Jose Alvarado.
Yeah, I thought it was Bradley actually. I'm hearing more beat writers say that again, it's another case that's not open and shut, but Bradley appears to be the front runner there.
Okay, so we're gonna go with no set closer with the Phillies. The Braves. This is interesting.
None of those guys are particularly exciting for the Phillies anyway.
Yeah, I mean, they all might be trading off just because they're not good. I think Will Smith's the guy for the Braves.
I think so.
I know Snitker said it could be a few guys. Yeah. Will Smith's being paid like a closer. He was an all-star closer in 2019. They got a lot of left-handers in their bullpen, so it's going to be Smith. And I love him drafting him. I love him because everybody's scared of drafting him.
I'll put a probably next to Will Smith. The other two for the Mets.
Was that too much analysis for you, Frank?
No.
Okay.
I put a definite for Edwin Diaz and Brad Hand. We'll put a probably for Will Smith. The Marlins. Apparently, it's Anthony Bass versus Yimi Garcia, but it sounds like Anthony Bass.
Well, I know Craig Mish has. I second guessed him on Twitter, and he asked me if I wanted to put money on it. So he's firmly behind Bass being the guy. Yimi Garcia is better. Bass is not that good. I don't think Bass would be the closer for long if he starts out in the role. I would say that's a toss-up personally.
All right, so we won't even put a probably next to that. How about the Cubs? Craig Kimbrell, that's for sure, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
That's been announced actually. A rare moment of closer clarity.
Ooh, I like that. The Reds, we have Amir Garrett. Lucas Sims was supposed to be part of this position battle, but he's dealing with an arm injury. They brought in Sean Doolittle, who hasn't really been himself the past couple of seasons. How confident are we in Amir Garrett?
I'm super confident because it seems like he and Lucas Sims were mirror images of each other last year. The lefty, the righty, their numbers were almost identical, but Sims' injury would seem to take him out of the running, right? And Garrett has been campaigning for the role since they traded away Raisel Iglesias, I don't know who else it would be. So I Garrett, like Will Smith, is somebody I love drafting because I think the uncertainty is unfounded.
All right, we'll go probably there. Josh Hader, that's a definite.
Hasn't there been some like we might want to use him like we kind of used to in the multi-inning role? I thought I saw that.
You tell me, Chris.
I mean, there are always whispers of him getting traded.
Yeah,
but I feel like he's my number one reliever, so obviously I'm not really worried about Hader's role.
With the Pirates, it looked like for a while it was going to be Richard Rodriguez. I've read some beat writers and I've heard some interviews that say the Pirates are going to mix and match more than you think. So,
yeah, I mean, it could be a situation like the Orioles last year where they win so rarely that it's hard to ever feel comfortable starting anyone. But Rodriguez was getting the saves down the stretch. He was clearly their best reliever last year. I would go as far to say probably there personally, but if you want to go a little lower than that, it's fine with me.
The Cardinals, seems like a lot of names here too. Jordan Hicks, Giovanni Gallegos, who we liked last year, and Alex Reyes also in the mix. Andrew Miller still there. Chris, any feeling here on the Cardinals? Probably opposition.
My assumption is if Jordan Hicks is right, it'll be him. He was starting to blossom in year 2, and I think he probably has the stuff and mentality that they want in the 9th inning. So I would think it's Hicks if he proves he's okay.
That's my read on it too. And it may be a situation where he can't possibly prove he's right at the start, in which case they'd probably mix and match. I actually think Gallegos is a little better than Hicks, so I'd like to see him win it, but it's probably going to be Hicks in the long run.
The Diamondbacks signed Joakim Soria. Is that a definite?
I think so.
They're calling it a competition, but
all right, we'll go as far as
I think Soria is the clear front runner.
How about Daniel Bard with the Rockies? Really good last year.
He seems to be the guy. I haven't seen that officially. Daniel Bard is the guy, but I think I've seen Rockies beat writers phrase it basically that way. He seems to be the guy.
Kenley Jansen is definitely the guy for the Los Angeles Dodgers. The Padres, we have no clue. Seems like a position battle between Melanson and Drew Pomeranz.
Well, yeah, and I mean, I've heard Emilio Pagan and Keone Kela are part of the mix. Yeah, that could be messy. I actually suspect Melanson's going to end up getting the majority there, which stinks. But I'd probably be drafting him and Pomeranz about on equal terms.
And then the Giants, I mean, LOL, we don't even have to talk about it. Gabe Kapler likes to mix and match. They have a bunch of names.
Let's talk about it.
They're talking up Jake McGee, and he was really, really good last year. So, but he's a lefty, so.
And they signed him to a multi-year deal. I know some Giants beat writer. I like that I just referenced all these nameless beat writers. I'm sorry. I don't know all their names, and I wouldn't remember exactly where I read it anyway. So sorry about that. But yeah, it seemed like there is going to be there's always going to be an amount of mixing and matching with Gabe Kapler. But if I had to pick one guy, it would be McGee. If I had to pick a second guy, it would be Matt Wisler, who had like a 1.07 ERA with the Twins last year and also signed a contract this offseason. Might be a lefty-righty split with them.
But you're not willing to go as far as to say one of these guys is probably the closer, right?
Look, in Tout Wars, I might draft one of them, 15-team roto league like that. Very late.
Draft both of them, I mean, they go pretty late.
I might. They might be my Matt Harvey level closer pick this year.
All right, so that among
Hunter Harvey.
Oh,
is that what you meant? Yeah,
that is what I meant.
That's going to be confusing. They're both on the Orioles.
That's true. They got the monopoly on pitchers named Harvey.
The Dark Knight. Hunter Harvey kind of sounds like a villain too for Batman.
Well, yeah, Two-Face.
It's true.
What was his first name? His first name
Dent.
was Harvey. Harvey Dent. Yeah, that's right.
Where's Harvey Dent? All right, so among the 15, I have 5 definites. I have 5 probablys so far. In the American League, Chapman, that is a definite. The Red Sox, Matt Barnes, wants to be the closer is what I read, but they traded for Adam Ottavino. I would say Barnes is probably the guy.
Yeah. Yeah. Another situation where Alex Cora isn't committing, and another situation where I think it'll change a lot.
The Rays had 12 different pitchers have a save last season.
Yeah. So there's no answer there.
That is the one bullpen, even beyond Kapler and his situation with San Francisco. The Rays bullpen is the one where I'm confident I'll never feel confident in anybody.
I'm confident I'll never feel confident.
Exactly.
Blue Jays, Kirby Yates, that's a definite, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The Orioles.
I mean, assuming health.
Assuming health.
Who are the Blue Jays?
Yeah.
Kirby Yates?
Yeah. Is that a definite or a probably?
Well, actually, when they signed them, I know it was written by some faceless beat writer that they may mix and match, but I'm presuming Yates will pull out ahead there. Yeah. I do want to mention for the Rays that Nick Anderson, Peter Fairbanks, and Diego Castillo are the three guys to target. Anderson is going to go much earlier than the other two, but yeah, it's going to be a mess all year.
They're all good. Like, I think that's the biggest thing. Anderson is a guy who, could have a 15K per nine. I know he faded pretty hard down the stretch last year, but he's been pretty awesome in the regular season since getting to the Rays.
The Orioles, it seems like people are saying Hunter Harvey's going to be the guy, but I don't know for sure. Since Brandon Hyde has been there, they've kind of mixed and matched quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to go with we have no idea with the Orioles, but it seems like Hunter Harvey is the leader, at least.
He's been so injured, they don't trust him to go back-to-back days. I think if they get around to trusting him, Hunter Harvey will be the guy, but who knows how many save chances they're going to get between now and then.
And I think it's kind of like the Marlins, where they might not have anybody who's good enough to, really be the closer anyway.
The White Sox have Liam Hendricks, who they just signed to a boatload of money, so he's definitely the guy. The Cleveland Indians, this is one where we kind of argued about it a little bit off air yesterday. James Karinchak looks like he has the stuff. They have Emmanuel Clase, who they traded for in the Corey Kluber trade. And I've seen Nick Whitgren rumored there. So I don't even know if we could say probably for Karinchak at this point.
Come on. It's got to be a probably.
According to beat writers, it's not. According to beat writers, it's a legitimate
impression when I read beat writer stuff. They're saying, look, Karinchak is the front runner, but if you want some alternatives, because since you're asking about him, this is who it would probably
I was just reading a story from yesterday.
Karinchak
petition.
Was the setup man last year. He was the reason Hand was rumored to be on the trading block, because they had Karinchak ready to go. And I don't see why they'd stray from that now. He was amazing. 17.7K per nine last year. James Karinchak had more strikeouts than Max Fried last year. The walk rate's kind of high, but you're not gonna, if you never give up hits, it doesn't matter.
If it wasn't for the PED suspension, though, Clase probably would have been the closer last year.
Why do you say that? No, there's no reason to believe that.
Because they traded Corey Kluber for him. I think he was viewed as the closer in waiting when they traded for him.
No, that
was the way everybody talked about it.
Oh, please. I love drafting Karinchak because of this attitude. It's like he goes so much later than close it. Like, that's the guy. Like, if I'm going to pay for a reliever, it's Karinchak, because he's going to be maybe the best reliever and you don't have to pay for him like that. And he's so good that even if he doesn't start out as the closer by some crazy twist, he doesn't start out as the closer, he'll still be a good contributor for your team. And he'll eventually take over as the closer because he's that good.
Yeah. See, I don't know. I don't disagree. I just think almost all of that could be said about Emmanuel Clase.
No, he's not a strikeout pitcher.
He's not a strikeout pitcher, but in terms of him being good enough that he might never lose the job. If it's Clase going into the season, I think it's possible
he just
even
runs healthy.
Yeah, he's not injured. It was a suspension.
He pitched in a spring training game today. I don't think he performed very well, but
his was a suspension.
All right. He has 24 saves in the minors. Emmanuel Clase does. So we'll see. Apparently, he's saying he wants to be the closer, so it's something to pay attention to. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt here, Scott. I'll give you a probably with James Karinchak. The Tigers have apparently Brian Garcia versus Gregory Soto. It seems like AJ Hinch was always a one closer type of guy, but I don't know between those two, so I'm going to leave that one up in the air for now with the Tigers.
Yeah, he's talking up Brian Garcia. But yeah,
I believe Gregory Soto is a left-handed pitcher as well. So.
Yeah, and he got a chance to close briefly for the Tigers last year and didn't hold up in the role. Garcia had a terrible strikeout rate, but he was a closer in college and had a 1.66 ERA. So yeah, it's probably another situation where they'll never settle on a guy for very long.
The Royals, Greg Holland, definitely the guy?
Not definitely, but probably.
All right, we'll go probably there. The Twins, seems like they're going to play matchups with Alex Colomé and Taylor Rogers. So
among others,
that one's up in the air for now. The Astros, Ryan Presley, that's a definite, right, Scott?
Yes.
Okay. Feel good saying that. Angels, Raisel Iglesias, they traded for him. Feel good about that one.
Yep.
The Oakland A's, Trevor Rosenthal, they signed him. I'm willing to say that's a definite. The Mariners, they traded for Rafael Montero. Is that a definite?
Pretty close to definite, yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
We'll go with that. The Rangers, Jose Leclerc. We're still trying to make Jose Leclerc a thing. Can we just give Marcus Evans a shot? That's my guy.
Well, he's hurt. He's definitely hurt.
He is hurt.
So he's not going to be ready at the start. But I have a feeling it might eventually be him. It doesn't seem like they want to move Jonathan Hernandez out of like a multi-inning setup role. And I think they're leaving the door open for Jonathan Hernandez to start someday even.
All right. So is that a probably on Leclerc for now?
I'd go less than probably. Whatever's less than probably.
Okay, so maybe count that then. Maybe Jose Leclerc is the guy for the Rangers. So among all of the closer situations in baseball, I have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 definites.
That's more than
2, 4, 6, 7 probablys. So 19 that we feel pretty good about, at least to start the season. And of course, I went back and listened to last year's relief pitcher preview that you guys did. Chris, you mentioned about half of those 19 are probably going to lose their job anyway. So,
yeah, I mean, that's the, I mean, I guess half of closers usually lose their job. I guess if, 12 of them don't have a job, then maybe it's only 6 of the other guys, but it'll probably be half. It's just between IL stints and underperformance and the fact that they're relief pitchers and one bad week can make them look like the worst pitcher in baseball. Yeah, you should expect half of those guys to lose their jobs at some point.
I do want to say, though, that beyond the 19, some of the situations we weren't willing to say we're as firm. I still feel pretty confident there's a front runner, and it's not somebody you're going to have to pay a lot for. So I do end up drafting a lot of the Joaquim Sorias and who's another example? Greg Holland.
Yeah, I like Holland quite a bit as well. I'm going to call an audible here. I was going to jump into ADP, but let's do sleepers, breakouts, and busts. Then we'll hit a break on the podcast side, and then we'll get to ADP after that. So, Scott, why don't you get us started with a sleeper reliever? I assume someone for saves, unless you have a sleeper sparp you want to go with.
Yeah, I mean, how deep do you want me to go? You want like prospective save source, or I'll just say Amir Garrett. I'll say Amir Garrett because he hasn't done it before, and I already talked about how I think he's clearly the front runner there. I think he has the stuff to do the job. And I like how late you could get him. He's somebody who, I'm looking to go cheap at closer. Amir Garrett, I feel comfortable drafting as my number 1. Of course, there are no guarantees he keeps the job all year, but that should go without saying.
Amir Garrett's ADP is 273, according to Fantasy Pros. The 37th reliever off the board, but God knows Fantasy Pros has a bunch of starting pitchers in their relief pitcher ADP. So it's probably somewhere like inside the top 25 that he's actually being drafted as an actual.
Let me see if I can pull up the numbers real quick since we've. Okay, so 245 ERA, 0.93 whip, 12.8 K per 9. He has had control issues in the past, but the strikeouts have always been there.
And over the last 2 seasons, a 3.03 ERA and 104 strikeouts and 71 in the third innings.
Yeah, that's what I was looking at too. Chris, was since 2019, 3.03 ERA, 1.29 WHIP, a little bit high because of the walks, 12.6 K per nine. Amir Garrett's a lefty. He's actually my breakout pick that I was going to have. So I'm with you, Scott. I like Amir Garrett quite a bit.
He's my breakout pick as well.
There are some names to pay attention to there. TJ Antone, if he doesn't make the rotation, there's a chance that he's in the mix. So we'll pay attention to it. But and if you buy the closer mentality thing, Amir Garrett just has it, man.
I mean, the guy tried to fight an entire team by himself. if there's anything that symbolizes the closer mentality, I feel like it's that. And then, I actually think the addition of Sean Doolittle makes it more likely that he's the closer for the Reds.
Right.
Because it gives them more flexibility.
The other lefty at the back end, yeah.
So, Chris, we'll stick with you. Why don't you give us a sleeper if Amir Garrett's your breakout?
AJ Puck. It's been a little while since we've really seen him. I think he had Tommy John surgery and then shoulder surgery. He actually had worked his way back from Tommy John surgery. We saw him in the majors at the end of the 2018 season, I believe. And then in 2019, he had Tommy John surgery or shoulder surgery. Am I remembering that correctly? I don't know. Something like that.
Shoulder surgery, yeah. Injuries
have been an issue for AJ Puck, who is a 6'7", like 265-pound left-hander who throws in the upper 90s. It's exactly the kind of profile you think a 6'7" left-hander who throws in the upper 90s would have. It's a ton of strikeouts, walk problems, will be really hard to hit. I think eventually he will end up in the rotation for the A's and potentially be a very, very good pitcher. And he is one of my favorite late round picks. I've got him in that, I'm looking for Nate Pearson and Michael Kopech and the very recent high end elite starting pitching prospects in that range. And AJ Puck's right there for me.
But Chris, you're drafting him hoping that he gets into the rotation, or are you hoping he's just an elite reliever with awesome strikeouts?
I think it's possible he's that, but yeah, you won't want to use him until he's in the rotation, I think. Because, early on, he probably won't throw every, multiple days in a row. You're probably looking at maybe 2 innings and then 2 or 3 days off. So, yeah, it's mostly a speculative, deeper league. Let's see if he can break into the rotation relatively quickly.
Yeah, a sleeper for me is Greg Holland. I mentioned the name. Like Trevor Rosenthal, Holland was really, really good with the Royals last season. A 1.91 ERA, 0.95 WHIP. I don't know what they did in Kansas City to rejuvenate the careers of both of those guys, but they were really good. And after they traded Rosenthal away, Greg Holland converted 5 saves down the stretch for the Royals. I don't love that there's, decent competition behind him with the Royals here, because they do have some names in Josh Stallman and Scott.
Hey, Wade Davis is still there, baby. They could bring back the whole late inning squad.
Yeah, and look, if they help these guys get back on track, maybe they could do it with Wade Davis too. But I feel like Greg Holland, as long as he's healthy and pitching like he was last year, he will be the guy for the Kansas City Royals. Scott, a breakout at relief pitcher.
It's James Karinchak, who I just wrote about in Breakouts 2.0, and I pretty much given my whole spiel on him. But one point I want to underscore is I mentioned he had more strikeouts than Max Fried last year, and that's not just me picking on Fried. He was in the same range as a lot of pitchers we starting pitchers that we think of as high end, and that's what's worth remembering with Karinchak is we're talking historic strikeout potential. Back before Josh Hader was the Brewers closer, we talked about how he was still worth a middle round pick because he could give you elite ratios, and for a reliever still give you a strikeout rate that would be able to hang with a certain percentage of the starting pitchers in the league. And Karinchak is there too. If again, it doesn't work out that he's the closer at the start of the year, and I would be very surprised if it doesn't, but just making the downside case for James Karinchak, I don't think it's going to be a waste to pick. I think he's going to be valuable for you either way.
The breakouts for both Chris and myself, we mentioned was Amir Garrett. Chris, we'll start with you with the bust. Who do you have as a bust? Besides everybody, of course.
Yeah, there's no obvious great pick for bust. The only guys who cost anything at reliever are generally the guys who should cost something.
I have one that I think is pretty good.
For me, it's the first one. So Josh Hader, I think, is technically number one in ADP. If it's not him, it's Liam Hendricks. One of those guys is going, but I think both of those guys are going in the top 60 on average. it's just not a price I'm willing to pay for a reliever. And, in Hader's case, I'm not too worried, but there were some warning signs last season. The fastball was less effective than we've seen it be. He lost about a tick amount of velocity. He threw it less often than he ever has. I'm not actually sure if that's a bad thing because his slider has been better than his fastball in his career. But, it is a different approach than we've typically seen from Josh Hader. And he gets hit really hard. This is a weird thing about Josh Hader, but he actually has some of the worst quality of contact data in the majors, if not actually the worst. And so it's the kind of thing where if he does lose, 3 or 4% on his strikeout rate, it could start to get ugly. Like he has a 15% barrel rate last season. He's been bottom 2 or bottom 1% in the league 3 years in a row. He just doesn't give up any contact. And so it doesn't really matter. But, if the strikeout rate is back in the 40% range or even a little bit lower, things could go wrong for Josh Hader. And then there's always the chance that he gets traded. He's been kind of persistently in trade rumors. And, if there's a bad week or two, Devin Williams looked like one of the best pitchers in baseball last season.
I will just say, if Hader's traded, I feel like we kind of forget this at times when we talk about players getting traded. I think if he's traded, he's going to be the closer for whatever team he goes to.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. Like there were some like Yankees rumors before last season, so there is a chance that a team like the Yankees or Dodgers, who are always looking to upgrade their bullpen when nobody necessarily thinks it's a priority, it's always possible one of those teams makes a move for him just because they're so stacked. In which case he might not be the closer, but yeah, it's more likely than not he stays a closer if he does get traded.
So I said I had a good bust pick, and I thought I did. I'm kind of a fraud because I have him 6th in my rankings as well, the same spot as both of you guys. But I am slightly worried about Brad Hand. The fastball velocity has dropped 3 straight seasons, 93.6 in miles per hour in 2018, 92.7 in 2019, 91.4 this past season when he led baseball in saves. So he was still really good. Maybe it doesn't matter that much, but his swinging strike rate also went from 13% in 2019 to 10.5% last year.
And since we're, just not to base the whole argument on saves, he had a 2.05 ERA, a .77 WHIP, 11.9 K per 9.
He was really.
I get where you're coming from with Hand.
Yeah,
but it's. I have a hard time overlooking how good those numbers are.
Scott, give us your bust.
My bust is Kenley Jansen. I don't know how many times we're going to go through the.
I think
he's just barely keeping it together during the regular season. He loses his job in the playoffs, but they're going to go right back to him at the start of the year. Like it's been like 3 years in a row of that, right? And look, he's held pretty steady the past 3 years. I mean, obviously not who he was in his prime, but the numbers don't look like bad for a closer, but it's clear they don't have as much confidence as they once did in him. And Brusdar Graterol is getting a lot of buzz as a closer in waiting. He's the guy who came over in the Kenta Maeda deal from the I think it was the Kenta Maeda. He came over from the Twins. May have been a 3-team deal.
Mookie Betts. Yeah, I think it was tied to the Mookie Betts trade. Yeah.
Okay. He doesn't get a lot of strikeouts, but like one of those ground ball specialists that just like wows everybody with the stuff and just very heavy fastball, weak contact all over the place. He's a closer and waiting type, Brusdar Graterol, in case the Dodgers finally decide to turn the page on Kenley Jansen. And I don't like investing in Jansen out of that fear.
I'm pretty sure when I listened to last year's relief pitcher preview, you also had Kenley Jansen as a bust, Scott. So I appreciate
what happened one of these years.
I appreciate the consistency there. If you're watching on the video side, don't go anywhere. If you're listening to the podcast, we're going to take a quick break. But when we return, we will take a look at ADP here on Fantasy Baseball Today. So we already spoke a lot about these closers, relief pitchers, but let's just look at where they're going in terms of ADP and quickly talk about what we think their value is, whether we'll actually target them here or not. There's clearly a top 2, Josh Hader at 55.4, Liam Hendricks at 58.8. Both are going in the 5th round on average of 12-team leagues. And Liam Hendricks, I mean, I had him as a bust last year. He made me look completely foolish. He has a 1.66 ERA since the start of 2019. That is sixth best among qualified relievers, and he just finishes the RP1 in both formats. So, Chris, anything you would like to add here outside of you won't be drafting them? I actually think Hendricks might be safer than Hader, which is weird to say.
Yeah, I guess he might be safer. I don't know. He's, older. The sample size we're talking about is still about 100 innings. But yeah, no, he made me look foolish. I was definitely skeptical of him last season, and I think he answered, most of the questions. So I have no questions about how good he'll be. I think he'll be pretty good. As long as he stays healthy, which is always a concern for every pitcher.
There are only 3 other relievers going inside the top 100 picks. That is Aroldis Chapman at 74.2, Edwin Diaz at 85.4, and Raisel Iglesias at 95.6. That is around 7 and 8. And Scott, Raisel Iglesias has been consistently awesome. His 4.16 ERA was an outlier in 2019. His ERA has been 2.74 or better in 4 of the last 5 seasons outside of that one. So if you're just talking about relievers going inside the top 100 picks, Raisel Iglesias is my favorite value, actually.
Yeah. I was pretty down on him last year. I thought he was headed a bad direction, giving up a bunch of home runs. But I'm okay with him. I don't think he has quite the ceiling of like a Hendricks or an Edwin Diaz or a James Karinchak for that matter. But he's very secure in the role, and I think I think it's okay to target him where he's going if you're somebody who is going to pay for saves, which I'm not.
Aroldis Chapman, it was a weird year for him last year. He missed time due to COVID. He only had 3 saves, and he only pitched 11.2 innings. So it's just, we can't put anything into the sample from last year for relievers. For Chapman, he will be suspended the first 2 games of the season, so keep that in mind in the first half week. I think the season starts on a Thursday. Chris, you've always talked about Edwin Diaz, and he bounced back. The strikeouts were insane. I will never own Edwin Diaz because while I think his upside is the number 1 relief pitcher, I think his downside is he's not the closer by May.
Yeah, but that's like
to a lot of guys.
To reiterate, I think that's true of everyone. Like I think
I think it's more likely with him because of the walks. They've been such an issue for him at times.
Yeah, I don't know. There was a really obvious explanation. It's kind of like Jose Ramirez, where there was a really obvious explanation for why things went wrong for him in 2019. For him, it was just he didn't have the feel for his slider. But most of the numbers looked okay. He just gave up a lot of home runs. I think you live with walks from a guy like Edwin Diaz when things are going right. And I don't have reason to think things won't go right. That slider is still dominant. The fact that he put those issues behind him last season, I don't think it's like a mental thing. I think the fact that the baseball change was a pretty good excuse. So as far as these things go, he's probably the most likely in the top 5 or so to end up on my team.
There are 5 more relievers going between picks 106 and 120, rounds 9 and 10. And then there's a big drop in ADP after this group, but that includes James Karinchak, who we mentioned. He's going off the board at pick 106, Brad Hand at 114.6, Ryan Presley at 116, Kenley Jansen at 116.8. And I threw Trevor Rosenthal in this group because his NFBC ADP over the past week is 118.7. And that's how long he's been with the Oakland A's. He signed with them. I think we can assume again that he is definitively the closer. And speaking of Rosenthal, Scott, the guy, I think this was the best that we've ever seen him. And we're talking about a guy who has multiple 40-plus save seasons in his career. Last year, 1.90 ERA, 0.85 whip, 33% K- walk percentage. That was 6th best among relievers. We've never seen that side of Trevor Rosenthal.
Yeah, we haven't. I mean, he was amazing last year, and this is the kind of potential we always thought he had going back to his Cardinals days. If he could just get the walks under control, I mean, the stuff was amazing. He kind of fell off the map in fantasy, some struggles returning from Tommy John surgery, but I think he's back. I think he's going to be a dominant reliever going forward. I know that's putting a lot on the small sample, but that's the way I feel. And he's probably, I've mentioned Karinchak. I've mentioned if I wait a really long time, Will Smith, Amir Garrett. But I think Trevor Rosenthal might be the reliever I'm most likely to take as my number one, just because I think the cost to benefit ratio is in his favor.
I like it. I believe we both have him ranked 7th at the position in Roto League, Scott. So we're simpatico there. Chris, among this group, Karinchak, Hand, Presley, Jansen, Rosenthal. Is there any one here that you are most likely to draft?
I think I probably agree about Rosenthal. I think I like his price the best. Karinchak, just because, like, as good as the strikeout rate was in the majors last season, I think it was 17% or 17.7K per nine. Excuse me. The percentage was like
tied with
60%.
Devin Williams.
Yeah, that led all relievers.
Who's getting his first mention?
Yeah, 48.6%. Sorry for James Karinchak. In the minors, there were stretches where he was even higher than that. He is incredibly tough to pick up. He's got that weird right over the top delivery and a great curveball. So, the fact that even if he doesn't end up the closer, he could be a really dominant option anyway does make me like him more. But, it does beg the question, why not, take Devin Williams?
Speaking of Devin Williams, he is part of the next group in ADP. 4 relievers going between picks 158 and 175, rounds 14 and 15 of a 12-team league. Devin Williams at 158.2, Nick Anderson at 160.6, Alex Colomé at 161.6, who is now with the Twins, and Taylor Rogers, who remains with the Twins. The ADP at 174.8. Devin Williams, you're right, Scott, we haven't mentioned him until the 56-minute mark here. He's awesome. He might have the best pitch in baseball with that changeup.
Yep. But Rookie of the Year winner, in case you tuned out for awards season.
Yep. And he's great, no doubt about it. There is a lot of volatility year over year in terms of reliever production. I just worry that if he's not giving you saves while the ratio and strikeouts will be really good, it's hard to invest in a reliever this early. Who
right. That's the answer to Chris's rhetorical question. No, why not just invest in Devin Williams? Because
he didn't have this in the minors like Karinchak did.
Right. There's reason to wonder if he's this good. If he's not this good, he's probably nothing for you. And there's a chance he could enter into saves. Hader gets hurt, Hader gets traded, but I think it's less than likely that Williams is any kind of save source for you this year.
Chris, what would you predict? This is fun, predicting saves. What would you predict the save percentage breakdown is between Colomé and Taylor Rogers? If you just had to throw a number out there, is it like 60-40 in favor of Colomé?
Yeah, probably. I mean, Colomé, I think Rogers is the better pitcher. But, the fact that he's a lefty and the fact that he's coming off a down year could make him, a little worse in their eyes. So, yeah, I would think Colomé is like 60-40. He just, I don't know. How long can he keep doing this? Just like strikes nobody out, but he keeps putting up really good ERAs.
I keep saying it too. He's been my bust pick every year. He's kind of like my Kenley Jansen for Scott, but since 2016, Colomé has a 2.62 ERA and a 1.11 WHIP with 138 saves. That's the third most during that span since 2016. So we keep waiting for Colomé to fall off. He's been really damn good. So I don't know. Maybe this will be the year, but he's familiar with the American League Central. He just pitched there with the White Sox. He's not going to get all the saves. I know Taylor Rogers is going to be in the mix and potentially others as well. But I would say he's the odds-on favorite to lead the Twins in saves this year. That is Alex Colomé. Only 2 more relief pitchers going inside the top 200 picks. That includes Craig Kimbrell at pick 183.2 and Rafael Montero at 191.8. Scott, do you like either of these gentlemen at this cost?
I mean, yeah, the cost for Craig Kimbrell seems crazy low. And I understand why. But clearly the Cubs have regained confidence in him. For all he's struggled the past 2 years, it's not like he's lost stuff. Like he still throws. He still averages 97 on his fastball. And his final 8 appearances last year, I know we're making small samples even smaller, but his final 8 appearances last year, 13 strikeouts, 3 base runners allowed in 7 1/3 innings. So he's like, that was, it looked like he got back on track. It looked like he got back on track. And considering how cheap he is here, you know, I'll be honest, I haven't drafted him yet because I never see him go this late, but ADP is what it is. So,
yeah,
I think it's a good value.
I think in his case, it was basically like 3 bad outings to start the season.
He allowed runs in each of his first 4 appearances. I saw, Chris.
Yeah, I think it was after that. Then, yeah,
yeah.
I
mean, you could go back further than his last 8 appearances, and the numbers are still amazing. 26 strikeouts in 12 2/3 innings for his final 14 appearances.
Yeah, his final 14 appearances, Kimbrel, 1.42 ERA, 18.5 K per 9. He averaged 97 miles per hour on his fastball, which is exactly where it was back in 2018 when he was a dominant reliever. So I like Kimbrel. I have no problem drafting him in this range. Once you get close to the top 200 in ADP, let's move a little bit faster. I'm going to lump some names here together. Just outside the top 200 is Drew Pomeranz with the Padres, Richard Rodriguez with the Pirates, Matt Barnes with the Red Sox, Jordan Hicks with the Cardinals, and Mark Melancon also with the Padres. So Pomeranz, Rodriguez, Barnes, Hicks, and Melancon. Chris, your favorite from that group?
I guess Melancon. I don't know.
Reluctant.
Yeah,
I want to say Pomeranz because I think he could be a top 5 reliever, but I've already said I think Melancon's probably going to lead the team.
Actually, sorry, Montero was in that group, right?
No, he was in the last group.
Sorry. Okay, then Montero would be my answer.
Yeah, I agree. If he was there.
And Jordan Hicks is also not in this group, or is he?
He is in that group.
Yeah, Hicks.
It could be Jordan Hicks. I want to see how he looks in spring training, but like I said earlier, I assume he's the closer if he's right, and he's impossible to square up with that 103 mile an hour bowling ball sinker that he throws. And he was starting to figure out the secondary pitch. I think it's a slider in 2019 before the Tommy John surgery. So, he did start to look like a potentially elite closer, whereas his first season I was pretty skeptical.
Just outside the top 250, we see Archie Bradley, Giovanni Gallegos, Greg Holland, Amir Garrett, Diego Castillo. Scott, we spoke about a bunch of these names already. Diego Castillo is one where if you play in a holds league or if you just need ratios, he's really good when he pitches.
Yeah. Do you want to are we about done with ADP at this point? Because I think there are some closer in waiting types we're talking about, or maybe if you're in like a holds league, you'll want to know about these guys.
Yeah. So I was going to talk about the Marmol strategy and some relief.
Okay. All right, sure.
But if there's any other just save sources, Scott, that you like that we haven't mentioned yet, feel free to throw them out there.
I mean, we went through every bullpen, so I don't think we've passed over anybody who is a favorite for saves.
Okay. Yeah, so let's talk about it then with the Marmol strategy, which is one that is most often used in a head-to-head categories league, probably only in a head-to-head categories league. And for those who need a reminder, it is in that format, head-to-head categories, where you have either no weekly innings minimum or a low one. You use your first 10 or so picks on hitters. You don't draft a single starting pitcher unless your league requires you to do so. If you must draft a starting pitcher, target ones late that have innings concerns, but good ratios. From rounds 11 on, focus on remaining closers and high-end setup relievers with strong ratios. You punt wins and strikeouts, but your offense is theoretically good enough, and you should win ERA, whip, and saves most weeks. And I mentioned in our head-to-head category mock draft recap that we did, Scott, that I use a pseudo Marmol strategy, which I called the 2x4, which 2 aces, 2 top 12 closers, 2 low-end closers, 2 high-end setup relievers, and then I just load up my bench with a bunch of upside starting pitchers. I feel like that allows me to be competitive across the board. But now is the opportunity to, whatever relievers you want to mention, Scott, that these high-end arms. Maybe they don't have a job right now. Really high strikeout numbers. They can help you in ERA and WHIP. Who are some of those names that you're looking at?
All right. I just want to point out I don't believe in the Marmol strategy before I get into that. I think it was developed during a time when there was greater differentiation among the hitter ranks. So you could guarantee yourself more victories in the hitting categories than you can now. And that kind of ruins the whole thing. Now that you can't do that. So anyway, prospective closers, I mentioned Tanner Rainey for Washington. It's really a trio that stands out above everybody else. Rainey, also Jordan Romano for the Blue Jays, if Kirby Yates isn't quite right, and you mentioned him earlier, Josh Stallmont for the Royals, who had an incredible strikeout rate last year, some control issues, but looks like a closer of the future type. Some other names who would fit the bill there: Chris Martin of the Braves. If they don't go Will Smith, like Chris Martin would be the leading right-hand candidate. He was their 8th inning guy basically last year. So he's somebody to consider. Aaron Bummer looked like he was in line for saves for the White Sox before they signed Liam Hendricks. And, Liam Hendricks could get hurt or something. You never know. I mentioned Brusdar Graterol already for the Blue Jays. Jonathan Hernandez, who I mentioned earlier, if they don't go Jose Leclerc, I imagine Jonathan Hernandez would be the leading contender for the Rangers. Yimi Garcia, we mentioned him for the Marlins. I don't think you can totally forget about Stefan Crichton. I don't think he's very good, but who knows what to expect from Joakim Soria back as a full-time closer. He's been an okay setup guy the past few years, but I don't think there are real assurances there for him. And I think most of these other guys I've covered already. Is there any setup guys I'm missing as far as you guys are concerned?
I will just mention Zach Britton just because Chapman has dealt with a good amount of injuries the past 3-4 years. He's kind of always dealing with a knee injury. So Britton, he gives you really good ERA, and he's performed well in that role before. Tyler Duffy with the Twins that we mentioned earlier. Freddie Peralta was really, really good with the Brewers last year. Trevor May, who's now with the Mets, I think can give you some good ratios. Jake Diekman, I don't think he's going to be in the mix.
That's the one I was saying about. I forgot him.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to be in the mix for saves anymore with Oakland, but he was awesome last year and could give you.
You never know. You never know. I mean, maybe we're wrong about Trevor Rosenthal. Maybe Trevor Rosenthal gets hurt. I think Diekman would be. You like when there's a clear guy who would step in and fill the void, and I think Diekman is that for the Athletics, unless he's bad.
Mike Myers with the Angels.
Good one.
Was really good last year. Scott, was there anyone else on the Angels you wanted to mention?
On the Angels? No, I don't think so. I think
you don't know where I'm going with this.
Oh, Ty Buttrey.
Ty Buttrey.
Yes.
I think that ship has sailed. I think the Ty Buttrey ship has sailed. I will just bring this up. And
Adam Ottavino. Sorry, Adam Ottavino for the Red Sox.
Yeah,
good if Matt Barnes doesn't work out.
He was traded to the Red Sox there. So yeah, that's a good call there. Originally, we got an email from Joshua Kirk a while back who asked us for help with the Marmol strategy, specifically with those RPASPs that I mentioned. So relief pitchers as starting pitchers, where if you play in a head-to-head categories league and you need starting pitcher eligible players, these are just relievers that have that eligibility. And I found some names on CBS that included Matt Whistler, who's with the Giants, Seth Lugo with the Mets, Brent Suter, who's actually really good with the Milwaukee Brewers, Josh Tomlin with the Cleveland Indians, Atlanta Braves. Is he with the Braves now?
I think he's still with the Braves.
Yeah, Josh Tomlin's with the Braves. He's not with the Indians. No. I'm thinking way back. Alex Young is with the Diamondbacks, and John Curtis is with the Miami Marlins. If you play on Yahoo, these are relief pitchers that have starting pitcher eligibility. Drew Pomeranz, Diego Castillo, Chad Green, Seth Lugo, Brent Suter, Freddie Peralta, Lucas Sims, Jose Leclerc, TJ Antone. So if you're looking for those relief pitchers that you could put in your starting pitcher spot, those are some names on both Yahoo and CBS that can help you out there. Scott, I don't know if there's anyone else you wanted to add.
No, I mean, like I said earlier, Whistler could end up becoming the favorite for saves for San Francisco. So he would probably be my favorite of that reverse SPARP group. But there are a few interesting names there.
Chris, you're still here. You want to take us home on relief pitcher? Is there anything else that you'd like to add? We didn't really talk about saves plus hold leagues, but I would say draft the best relievers if you play in one of those.
Yeah, generally speaking, the thing to keep in mind is the holds leaders don't tend to get as many holds as the saves leaders every year. You're usually looking at guys in the high 20s, low 30s in the saves leaders, whereas you're usually looking in the high 30s, low 40s for the closers or saves leaders, excuse me. So I think the effect of save and holds leagues, and I'm about to draft one tomorrow with my Tout Wars team. I think the effect is, and everybody who's drafting in Tout Wars, stop listening. It just kind of flattens the relief pitcher position. I think that's the biggest takeaway there is
it removes the most interesting part of it.
Like a guy
chase for saves is the only thing keeping relief pitcher interesting, I feel like.
If anything, it makes the holds guys a little more valuable just because they're also potential closers, but for the most part, like it's not like you can get both. You can't double up. It's not like you could get, you could, but you're not going to get 28 holds and 30 saves. It's not that kind of thing. So it's one or the other. It's not really saves plus holds for most pitchers. So yeah, I think you kind of just draft the best relievers.
I will say, just in general, I'm not a fan of saves plus holds. It seems like a cop out for people that don't want to scour the waiver wire for saves. But with that, I will just wrap everything up with this. That is the truest way to just draft relievers for skill, because at that point you're not worried about saves. You're just drafting the highest skilled relievers with the most strikeouts and the best ERA, WHIP. So
still a slight boost for closers since saves are accumulated faster than holds.
And half of those guys are going to bust anyway because they're relievers.
That seems like a good place to end our position previews. We've finally done it. We've made it all the way through. For Scott and Chris, I am Frank. Thank you all for listening and watching Fantasy Baseball today. We'll be back again tomorrow. Bye-bye.